Hello everybody and welcome to day 2 of Abta LifeLine and TTG's Get Travel Talking Week. And today is all about Tools Tuesday, how we can help people in the travel industry who may be struggling with their mental health at this time. And I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Joanna from the Centre of Crisis Psychology. And we're going to be talking about some of those mental health issues that our travel staff have been experiencing over the last 14 months. And hopefully some of those services and some information and techniques that hopefully will help you going forward. So welcome, Joanna. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining me today. Just before we start, just want to give a little bit of background about the relationship between CCP and Abta LifeLine. And we very much set up a partnership with yourselves, funnily enough, going into the first lockdown. And the reason we set that partnership up, if you recall, was that, we were just coming off the back of the Thomas Cook collapse. And we had seen the devastating impact that that had had on our colleagues. A lot of them, highly valuing the brand. They'd worked for them for many, many years, and the loss of their job and their self-worth that they felt and everything like that. And that was quickly followed by the pandemic. So we saw at first hand some of the devastating impacts, as I mentioned, and we wanted to put in place a service that would be most useful to our colleagues. So again, thank you for joining me today. Do you want to just give us some sort of information about some of the cases that you've been seeing, certainly over the last 14 months or so?
Yeah, it was interesting that, we came on board in the aftermath of Thomas Cook because one of the biggest things that's come through from many of the numerous people we've supported over, beyond the last 12 months has been redundancy and job loss. Obviously, with the impact of not travelling, holidays haven't been booked, have they? Which has had a devastating impact on, the huge sector that is our travel industry, particularly for those independent holiday companies. I suppose what stood out from a very human to human experience was the absolute shock that some of those small businesses experienced from some of their customers they'd been providing holidays, lovely experiences to for many years, that were coming in and contacting them and becoming really aggressive and quite rude. And the consequences of that kind of behaviour for them was really shocking, and a sense of disbelief and a real sort of feeling of guilt, when actually none of what was happening during the pandemic was as a result of any actions that they'd taken. So that really stood out for me. And I know that people in crisis and following trauma and adversity in life go through a certain range of kind of phases of recovery, if you like, phases that include shock, disbelief, a sense of dissociation from life, helplessness, and a shame often associated with that. So, these were very powerful experiences that people were talking to us about. And, I've got to say, it takes a lot to pick up the phone and reach out for help. And, when people do, it feels so rewarding for me. But what comes through from those people that we've supported is that sense of relief, a sense that actually there might be a way through the uncertainty and this crisis. Obviously now we're at a different point, but I think if we cast our minds back to last year, it was a very, very different situation where there was no vaccination, and it's really difficult to consider what the future may look like when many travel companies had put plans in place for what they wanted from their businesses and what they anticipated and what they'd forecast. The reality of the situation looked very, very different for those individuals. And I suspect there are many people that are still struggling to, accept and assimilate what they've been through over the past 12 months. And I would urge them to reach out. And what we know, what you know, Trudie, and I know, is that through talking, from expressing, describing what's been going on for people in their lives, a lot can come from that. and we are there to support people that have been struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from the charity perspective, we have certainly seen, as you've identified, that there's almost like two different kind of categories within travel. You've got those employees that have been made redundant and they're really worrying about their self-worth. They're worrying about how they're going to put food on the table. They're worrying about how they can put together a CV and how they can compete in the marketplace, at this current time. And then, as you pointed out, the business owners that are worried about their business reputation. You've mentioned the verbal abuse that they're getting, the worry about, financial failure. All of these things have really come together this year. And we've certainly, as you know, seen an increase in demand for the support that you're certainly given. And that support, we must continue and keep extending it. In terms of sort of, somebody that might be struggling right now and doesn't know what to do or where to go for support, what would you suggest to them?
Okay. Well, I would suggest that you use this little technique, and I often describe it to clients, and it's simple, and it can work where people really procrastinate and go over and over their problems and get stuck in that procrastination, and it prevents them from taking some action. So the little technique is counting down from 5. So if you think that you would benefit, there's a possibility that you might benefit from speaking, by reaching out to someone. Count down from 5 and blast off. So like a rocket, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to do it. And if it's picking up the phone to reach out to Abta LifeLine, or indeed speaking to a friend, a trusted colleague, a family member, count down and take that action. Because what I know from working with people for over 20 years is where we are proactive with ourselves and we take some course of action, that can really go a long way in starting the process of rebuilding what we lost, whether that's self-confidence, whether it's, problems in our relationships, whether we've lost some sense of control and so we're feeling helpless. These small techniques can go a long way in helping kind of offset some of that. So take some action, whatever you think it is, whatever you've been kind of considering, and do it today. Reach out today. There's no reason to put anything off. That might actually make a difference in your life. That's just a simple technique.
No, I think that's really important, because what we're also trying to do through this week is sort of get rid of that stigma that mental health is something that you can't talk about, but actually it is okay not to be okay, and there is numerous resources out there and organizations that can help you, apart from Abta LifeLine and your good selves, but there is a wealth of information out there. Joanna, what would you suggest if you see a colleague potentially that is really struggling and perhaps maybe burying their head in the sand? I mean, that's a really tricky situation to kind of deal with.
It is, isn't it? And it can feel, often people refrain from reaching out to support others because they're really fearful of making things worse. But actually what I can say is most of the time, it makes a huge difference when we have that courage. And actually we're trusting in our instincts. We're trusting in what we feel based on what we see and what we experience, what we hear. We're being intuitive, aren't we? We're identifying some differences usually. We recognise that they're not quite themselves. So what I usually suggest is if we have the courage to own that ourselves and open up to having that conversation. So it might be that we say something like, I'm noticing that you may be not yourself right now, and I'm wondering if I might be able to support you or if there's anything I can do. That makes such a difference for those people that might be affected by, some of what we've talked about, because it gives them an opening, doesn't it? It's really difficult to bring up something that's going to be really challenging to express. We've all probably been in those sorts of situations where we want to say something, but something holds us back. And when another person opens up that conversation and says, I've noticed something different about you, and I'm concerned and I'm here, then people are more likely to tap in and reach out and access that. And it might be at the beginning, there can be like a drip effect where it's just little things that might be said, and they'll be testing out, are you there for me? Because actually it feels like the world is completely against me now. Everything looks in tatters, and maybe you're just going to walk away too. So it might be a drip effect of talking. So be patient, sit with, your instinct, be compassionate, demonstrate that care. And that can be done by maybe not saying anything sometimes. We say a lot when we say nothing, I think, but it's by being open to hearing what that person wants to say. And I think that is so, so powerful when we're seeking to be that source of support, when we want to help. And actually, the benefit of that for the individual that listens is that they feel like, yeah, I've been there for someone. That can feel so rewarding too, can't it? When we know that somebody's benefited from talking to us, from expressing, and they've thanked us for that, and it can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes. It might be you're the one to introduce an appropriate service for that individual. You might remember having seen, this recording or something online for a service that would help them. And you might have been the person that kind of puts them on the right path to where they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the listening is so important. I remember watching, I don't know whether you saw it, the Roman Kemp documentary a little while ago, and he was saying, pick up the phone and say, are you okay? And then say, how are you really? Tell me, I'm here for you. And it is just being that kind of genuine person that, you're not going to be dismissed by a quick comment that, no, actually I'm fine, but really underneath they're not.
Well, I think that's where it can work by opening up to what your instincts are saying about you, because you're opening up the conversation by identifying what you feel. That really lends itself to someone sort of telling you how they feel. But if you open the conversation with, are you okay? A very closed question, the chances are you're going to get an answer that isn't what you're looking for. Yeah, I'm fine is usually the answer to that. Well, we all know what fine is an acronym for. So owning and open questions will really get you to the root of potentially what might be going on. And you might be just the person to sort of support your colleague, your friend, your neighbour, your relative in that right direction to find somewhere that will help them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we've been saying this week is, if there's one thing that you do this week in terms of engagement with this Get Travel Talking Week, pick the phone up to somebody you haven't spoken to in a while, say hi, see how they are, and see if you can lend them some support if they need it. So that's really, really useful advice. And on another level, for an employer that's got staff, as I say, we're talking a lot now about mental health awareness, and there's talk about mental health plans and programs. And, it's so important that we put mental health in as the forefront, as businesses recover and travel recovers. What do you think businesses could be doing now with hopefully travel beginning to open up and staff coming back into work and everything?
Well, businesses or individuals, Trudie, what I often notice is avoidance, not actually being open to acknowledging what actually has happened, where we've come from, and that potentially probably every business and most individuals, and I don't like sweeping statements, but I think in this situation now, it's very hard to imagine that not everyone has been affected in some way. Some people have positively grown through the pandemic, but our focus is on businesses and individuals and how we find our way through this transition. So it's about acknowledgement for me. It's about, let's consider how this has been. Let's speak, let's communicate how we've got through this past 12 months. How have we done that? Where are we at now? How do we feel about losing some of our colleagues? How do we imagine we'll experience going into offices again? And how will they be? So I think it's key to acknowledge where we've come from, where we're at, and actually what we all want from the future on an individual basis and as organisations. We've got to recognise that the landscape is very, very different. And I think that maybe we've all been changed in some way, as I've said, positively for some people. I've seen some recent research around that. For many of us, there's been some adversity involved in what we've experienced. You know, it might be that we've coped really well. It might be that we think we've coped really well, but actually, if we reflect back, maybe there have been some significant challenges. Maybe our personal relationships haven't been great as a result of the stress, the anxiety around, you know, our businesses or our jobs. Maybe it's time to reflect and consider and think about the effect so that we can consider now what will be most beneficial, how we imagine working together in environments again, the connections that we need to make. So, you know, some organisations are thinking about hybrid working. Well, how will that be? I think it's really important to get into discussions, to explore, to review, to consider where we go from here for businesses and individuals, and to be transparent and honest within that. You know, what have we learned about the positive effects of working from home? What are the negatives of that? How can we put all of that into the pot and consider effective ways moving forward that will, you know, improve the outcomes for the businesses? How can we get travel going again, and, you know, mobilise the workforce and the people so we can mobilise the customers to book holidays and travel again?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, transparency, all of those things are absolutely key. And you're quite right. I think for every individual going back into a workplace, potentially that experience is going to be difficult, isn't it? And it's about having those conversations to work out what is right for one might not be right for another, but how can we kind of bring this jigsaw together to, you know, formulate a plan that is going to suit the business needs as well as, you know, bring on and support your colleagues going forward. So really important. Just on another note, I was just thinking, sorry, go on, Joanna.
Well, I was thinking about, you know, some of the independent holiday companies that have, you know, obviously accessed the helpline and, you know, expressed that it's really challenging that they're managing with one member of staff. And so I can see both sides where that member of staff then has gone from 4 of them working together in a travel shop to just themselves and feeling the responsibility, maybe, you know, the pressure of that. So I think that's where that communication from both sides can be key in how things will move forward and work for everyone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just on a slightly more, a slightly different basis for an individual, if you know that somebody, it's more what I would call an emergency situation, say that you have got somebody that is absolutely at the end of their tether, you know, and you are really worried that they're going to do something silly, you know, what do you, as that person, how do you respond to that? What advice do you give, and what do you do in that situation?
Well, I think if we're thinking about somebody that's considering suicide, and, you know, that has come through through a number of calls, you know, and these are individuals that are basically saying, I can't see a way through. This seems so pervasive and so permanent that the only course of action that I am considering right now is suicide. Well, when we listen to someone talk in that way, it's about really being compassionate and helping them burst that bubble of pervasiveness and find some hope. And if you are that bridge to the service, you know, might be Abta LifeLine, it might be Samaritans, to somewhere to professional help, then, you know, you've achieved a lot. So imminently, if we really get a sense that someone is at risk of harming themselves, it's about listening, and it's about seeking permission to access on their behalf with them, in collaboration with them, accessing their GP, maybe A&E, but additional services that will be essential to their well-being, to really prevent them being lost in this bubble of negative beliefs and assumptions about there's no possibility of a future that can be rewarding, pleasurable, joyful, that they can't envisage actually getting back to a similar place in terms of enjoying work, family life, social life. You know, if people are really expressing that they're a burden, that's a key sign that something's going on at a deeper level, where they believe that, you know, people are better off without them. It's really about having courage to listen and to help them take some alternative action than whatever it is they might be considering. And don't be fearful. Try not to be fearful of these conversations, because there's nothing to suggest that by opening up a conversation where you really believe somebody's at risk of taking some action to harm themselves, there's no evidence to support that that conversation leads to that happening. I think that's a real fallacy. It's just an assumption often that is made, but there's nothing to support that. And there's everything to support openness, talking, finding an alternative way through, and helping people access appropriate services, life-saving services for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you quite rightly mentioned a couple of cases that we referred through to you that, you know, were talking about suicide, as you know, and luckily there was no intention to carry that out. But having that support service from yourselves proved so valuable. Just that ability to talk through, you know, the experiences that they were having, the way they were feeling, and having somebody to listen to that, help them navigate a path through that moment in crisis. So, so important. I think the other thing to mention, you know, on this subject is, you know, there's many other reasons for people's mental health as well. You know, the pandemic, we know people have gone through bereavement and all of those things. And financial stress is a huge issue right now. Yeah. And I know we as a charity are seeing a lot of people come to us because they're struggling to put food on the table. They can't pay their bills and everything else. I mean, we're going to see more and more of that, aren't we, Joanne, as we go through?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I often listen to phone-ins on Radio 4, and I listen to clients, and I think financial burden, financial crisis can be one of the most devastating experiences in life, because people cannot envisage being capable of improving their income, of finding ways through the debt that can accrue sometimes in life. You know, what a couple of other things that have come out of the past year are, people have had more time and they focused on trying to improve their financial situation by gambling, which, you know, does not work and has led to even greater levels of debt. So what I would say is it's essential to access, you know, dedicated services to help with your financial situation, because they do make a difference. What I also know is that when these organizations support you, it doesn't always stop the letters coming. And you know, clients will say that can be incredibly challenging, you know, day in and day out, to receive calls and letters, feeling bombarded by requests for money. What I would say is you hand those over to these agencies. They're amazing at supporting people, and that it is a long-term plan, but you can definitely get there with that support. And if it's a financial issue and debts have accrued and your savings have reduced and you're really desperate, please look for some dedicated services to help. And there are a number of agencies that are around, because I think, as you've said, Trudie, this is something that's going to be increasingly problematic for people. You know, often as human beings, we have a tendency to avoid our problems. Well, where money and finances are involved, that just escalates, doesn't it? If we don't make or take some measures to stop, you know, that building out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one. Sorry, just getting a bit of feedback, aren't we? But that is one of the other things that Abta LifeLine can help colleagues with. We do have a wonderful partner with Citizens Advice. They're based in Manchester, but it's a telephone service. And they are phenomenal at giving the debt and the benefit advice and even housing advice. And they will take on cases for people that, you know, need to challenge the system, the benefit system or whatever else. And I have to say, people that we have sent through to them, they have called it life-changing, because for the first time in a long while, they're taking control of their finances.
And that's key, isn't it? It's that control, whatever the problem, when you feel like you've got a greater level of control over something and you've got that support too, you know, the world looks like a different place altogether. And I'm really passionate about people accessing financial support, because there's such a correlation between mental ill health and struggles and financial inequality. So, you know, it's key. Please reach out and access these services.
No, thank you. So that really draws to an end, you know, this short little webinar with regards to, you know, the support that's out there and some of the key issues that, you know, our staff, our travel colleagues have been experiencing. But I think the important thing is you've rightly highlighted, there is support out there, whether it's through Abta LifeLine that can help with the counselling through your good selves, or whether it's the financial grants that we can help with, crisis grants for priority bills. We can help in emergencies with food vouchers. And as I say, that expert advice with Citizens Advice, it's non-judgmental. It doesn't affect your credit rating. There are people out there, that a network of support that we can help you with. And I'm assuming, Joanne, you can work with businesses directly too through your, you know, your capacity at the centre. So.
The other thing that I'm just remembering too, to maybe finish on, which will be quite nice, Trudie, are a number of clients I've worked with, which as a result of it, and I can think of somebody from Thomas Cook that actually took that opportunity. I worked with her for months, and I know recently she's been in touch to let me know she's a yoga teacher now, so completely change of career. But that was lovely to hear that. And somebody else that actually had planned to set up a cake making business, and she's taken that forward. So from, you know, real challenging times, sometimes we have an opportunity to embrace something different, and that can be really fulfilling.
Oh, that's a wonderful note to finish on. So thank you for sharing that. And also thank you for your time. It's really appreciated. I have to say that everybody who's been involved in this week has given their time freely, and we're really appreciative of it, because it is such an important initiative. So thank you indeed, Joanne, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care now. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.